they embody everything that's ugly about large corporate market dominance. Um, in my view, and KAP has expressed this before, the government should buy it back. Not that the government's a good operator of anything, but it used to own an airline because the only reason they divested from it was to create competition. But it doesn't exist. There's too much market dominance from one player, and they screw everyone that's in has where you have that limited choice. So Qantas was founded to provide connectivity to people in remote areas, where I'm from. Was started Whitten Cloncurry area to provide connectivity to the coast so that we could expand our nation. And today it does the exact opposite.
Recently, the Commonwealth Bank announced record profits of $10 billion on the back of rising interest rates, which they acknowledge is causing mortgage stress. On the very same day, they announced they will no longer be lending to new gas and oil projects to meet their climate goals. Can you think of a more succinct summary of the contradictions at the heart of corporate behaviour in Australia in the woke era?
They keep breaking new boundaries, and it seems to thrive at that executive level, that executive corporate level, on multi-million dollar salaries, and perhaps they're trying to provide an outlet for their guilt and some moral guilt that they exercised as virtue signalling. So saying, yeah, we're going to try and stop coal mining in Australia with our which is just so ridiculous on so many levels. A bank or financial institution that's its entire existence was the National Bank. That was the government bank was its origin. The Development Bank of Australia that's developed and thrived off capitalism, off these industries for so many years, and people that worked in these industries, that they'll immediately turn their back on it at the same time where they're screwing the public, the battlers, the workers out there. They're screwing them on interest rates, and slow to pass on when there's any rate drops, but quick to pass on the rate rises, and their margins always stay very healthy on the interest rates compared to investments, and they're closing banks to save money everywhere, to cut their service levels and improve their product, their profitability, and at the same time they're reducing their appetite to lend in remote areas. So saying, well, we can't really be bothered lending in those remote areas. It's a bit too much effort. We're not comfortable with the risk in those areas when we're not familiar with it. So we're just not going to lend out there either. So they're kicking middle class Australians, remote regional Australians, every which way. And to top it all off, the executives are saying, and you know what, we're so virtuous, which is just ridiculous. Saying we're so virtuous that we're gonna not lend to these industries anymore. It just disgusts me. What is the most disgusting thing is that the government is not acting to disable this sort of behaviour. It's so discriminatory, and for them to start applying some ridiculous sort of moral code into their practice, it's discriminatory, and they have no right to do it. No one votes for them, and they've become so dominant in the way that they operate in Australia. So governments are scared to take on the banks. They're so dominant that it's a scary precedent that they can apply their own corrupt and odd, strange moral code and impose it on the way that we operate in Australia. It offends me on so many levels.
Coincidentally, today, Qantas revealed profits of $1.7 billion and said that they're not going to pay back the $2 billion in government subsidies that they received during COVID. So we're talking about the company which is number one as the most complained about company in Australia, according to the ACCC. There's also a $1 billion lawsuit out against them because of some of their practice during COVID in the way that they limited people accessing travel vouchers and that kind of thing. I mean, what's your view on Qantas as a corporate entity today?
Yeah, that they embody everything that's ugly about large corporate market dominance. In my view, and KAP has expressed this before, the government should buy it back. not that the government's a good operator of anything, but it used to own an airline because the only reason they divested from it was to create competition. But it doesn't exist. There's too much market dominance from one player, and they screw everyone that's in has where you have that limited choice. So Qantas was founded to provide connectivity to people in remote areas, where I'm from. It was started Whitten Cloncurry area to provide connectivity to the coast so that we could expand our nation. And today it does the exact opposite. If you live in a remote area, you have no choice, you get screwed. And so if I'm going from Mount Isa to Brisbane, it's nothing to pay $400 or $500 for a single mum trying to get to see her family or take her kids to school or hospital. They'll pay $500 a ticket one way, and they can jump on the same day jump from Sydney to Brisbane, or Sydney to Brisbane to Melbourne at a similar distance, and it'll cost them $100, $200. So it just makes no sense. And we have high volumes and every metric, but we get that they use their market dominance in these remote areas to wind the price up. The government refuses to even watch over them and act. So it is just despicable that they got. What was the amount of? There was an amount that the government gave them as during
Yeah,
COVID.
it was $2 billion over
$2 billion.
three or
Yeah,
four
yeah,
different
the two
programs.
billion
Yeah,
dollars in COVID out
yeah,
of our taxes, our hard-earned, and then they go and treat a lot of their workers like rubbish, and then have the hide to put their hand out in the middle of COVID, and now they're boasting about a profit. It just disgusts me at no end, and they've sullied that brand of what was a proud Australian brand. They've just sullied it so badly, to the point where they had their 100-year anniversary. I think it was last year, and no one come out. No one. It was all a really sad, reflection because, in my view, they weren't game to do much to celebrate at all because there's nothing to celebrate. They've just driven that brand into the ground, into a large corporate machine that does exactly the opposite that it was built on. And they should be ashamed to ever say the spirit of Australia again. In fact, I don't think they use that anymore, but they should be too ashamed to use that logo.
yeah. And to add the icing on the cake, a few weeks ago they came out and said they're going to put the Yes logo
Yes,
on
yes,
some of
logo
their
on the plane.
planes.
So I just don't understand when these big companies decided that they'd start dictating. And I think they're that arrogant. Some of these leaders, like that CEO of Qantas, Freddie Stone, but that they're so arrogant. These people, they feel that they should just impose their values on the Australian public and the shareholders of Qantas. I'm sure they didn't put that to the shareholders of Qantas, and the rest of Australia are forced to use that service. They think it's within their rights to start imposing that. And I mean, who is this fellow CEO? He doesn't own the company. He didn't build it up. Like, it's shareholders own it. He didn't ask them. He just, bet you London Brick on it was just driven from the top. They want to put their thing on. So it's it's a really sad thing of what that company's become. And yeah, I think if you're a shareholder, you should be ashamed of being associated with them.